Nets, stinky old ones that have been floating around for a while. Rob Coombs, good morning.
Good morning, Linda.
This is an unlikely connection. How did you get onto the ghost net business?
It's a bit of a long story, isn't it? As you say, there's a huge issue here. There's something like 650,000 tonnes of disused fishing nets are dumped every year. And they're made of nylon. And it's a nylon that's actually compatible with the nylon that we use in making carpet tiles. We make carpet tiles that are a high design product that ends up in offices, schools, hotels, and so on.
Right.
And for the last 20 years or so, we've been trying to work out a way of running our business in a smarter way that has a lower environmental impact. And one of those programs is to use high recycle content in the yarn that we use. And one of our suppliers of yarn has worked out a way to recycle it and had discovered that they could use fishing nets, disused fishing nets, as a source of the reused material. So we started to source nylon from them that ultimately contained some of these disused fishing nets, which was a great step forward. And then we managed to make contact with the Zoological Society of London, who were doing a whole range of work in this area of the central Philippines, trying to work with local village communities, coastal communities, as they dealt with the problem of this disused fishing net issue, clogging up waterways, defiling beaches, and so on. So we formed a partnership with them and with an outfit called Project Seahorse, which is a local Philippines-based conservation house. And we put together a program that is now in its second stage, whereby we encourage local villagers who are completely dependent on fishing, which is a highly volatile source of income, obviously. And we encourage them to reclaim, to go and in fact collect these disused fishing nets, bale them up, and if you like, deposit them into local banks that we have set up, where they use the nets as a substitute for cash. The nets go into this bank, as it were, are baled up and then shipped back to our yarn supplier, who then converts it into yarn that they send to us, that we in turn make into carpet tile.
Oh, that's
so
extraordinary story. You've gone to a huge amount of effort to make this happen. Is that the level of commitment that you think companies should be showing to environmental principles?
Well, I think we've certainly found over the last 20 years that if you can create an alignment between the interests of the natural environment, local communities and business, it's a fantastic success story. You know, we've grown our business here dramatically on the back of that. You know, we've certainly found that there's an extremely strong business case for a more sustainable way to run a company. You end up lowering your costs. You end up designing much better products. You end up with many more customers and a much better team of people working for the company. So there's a huge range of benefits that come to the business, and of course, to a wider social program as well. It just has some fantastic impacts.
Yeah. And so Rob Coombs is here, CEO of the Asia-Pacific region for the company Interface. They make carpet tiles, high-quality ones that you might see in businesses, high-rises around Sydney, I suppose. Just take me back to the situation in the Philippines. You say that the nets are deposited in that bank. And what's the benefit to the local community?
The benefit is that they get cash for that. So,
right.
For every for every 1 kilogram of nets that they deposit, they get cash to the equivalent of half a kilo of rice, which is enough to feed a family of 5. So that's the sort of cash equivalent that comes from depositing the nets into this bank. So far, we've worked with 26 villages in the region. We've touched about 900 households, and the aim is to get to a point where the villagers are collecting and depositing about 200 kilos of nets per month, which in turn will lead to the ability to provide about 5,000 meals a year.
But Rob, there's a problem here, because if you were to successfully get the message out that these nets are so environmentally damaging that people shouldn't be letting them go like they are, then you could suddenly lose this very important material that you've managed to harvest. The whole thing could fall in a hole.
Well, that certainly would be a nice problem to have. But, I think at this stage, the forecast that we have developed over the past 18 months on the project is that there should be enough nets generated annually to be able to service that sort of volume. Wow. And the next step is to move to other parts of the world.
I was going to say, I mean, because and is it just fishing nets? Because there's lots of, we hear about these islands of plastic, these gyros in the middle of the sea. What else could you do?
Well, that's right. I mean, if you look at it in totality, there's something like 6 million tonnes of plastic waste that are deposited into the oceans. The issue is attempting to find plastics and materials that are in fact compatible with what we do. So fishing nets, because of their bulk and the type of nylon that's used, seems to be the best way for us to go in the short to medium term. Our aim next is to expand this to other parts of the region, and then to move on to India and Africa, where it's also a huge issue. And also we're in discussions locally in Australia with fishing organisations to see if there's some scope for that here as well.
Wow, Rob, it's an amazing story. Great to hear there's that corporate initiative out there to go with that program. Thanks so much for talking to us today.
Thank you, Linda.
Bye-bye. Rob Coombs, he's CEO for the Asia Pacific region of a company called Interface. They make carpets out of fishing nets that would otherwise be fouling waterways, killing wildlife. And unfortunately, the sad part of the story is there's going to be plenty of them for years to come for them to continue with that business model. 7:02 ABC Sydney Mornings. Richard Feidler will be along after 11 o'clock.